Hi everyone. I'm sorry it's a little bit dark. I can't seem to get the lighting right here. Um, but in any case, I wanted to just touch base with you after your responses, and also to preview a little bit of the material that we're going to be reading for this week. So happy Labor Day. I hope you're not laboring, but if you are, I hope it's going well. First of all, I want to say that there were simply some outstanding responses to the Poe and Hawthorne stories you read last week. Wonderful, some absolutely wonderful, very, very detailed, very, very analytically and insightful. And I hope if you have a chance that you are reading the work of your colleagues, because some of it is really quite stunning, and all of it has insights that we can all benefit from. So we're now moving on from short stories from Brown and Poe and Hawthorne into one of Hawthorne's most famous works, The Scarlet Letter. But this week we're starting with the very beginning of that work, at least the very beginning in terms of where he places it in the book. It wasn't the first pages that he wrote. But in any case, we're starting with the Custom House. Some of you may have read The Scarlet Letter before, and you may have read it with the Custom House, or you may have skipped the Custom House and begun with chapter 1. But I don't want to do that, because I think there are really good, compelling reasons to read the Custom House, and I want to mention a few of them to you, so that when you're reading, while you're reading, you have a sense of what to really keep an eye out for. The Custom House, for one thing, it's written in a very different style than the rest of the novel. Or I shouldn't say novel, because really when we're talking about Hawthorne, we're talking about what he would call romance fiction. And he would make very distinct differentiation between the novel, which he sees as something that is very involved in mimesis, really, right, in kind of replicating everyday life, and American romance fiction, which is highly indebted, right, to allegory. In any case, the style of the Custom House is very, very different from the style of the body of the Scarlet Letter itself. And some of you may find that style off-putting, and some of you may be drawn to it. But in either case, here are a few things that I'd like you to be thinking about as you make your way through that text. The first one has to do with Hawthorne and autobiography. Hawthorne very, very rarely reveals much about himself. He's one of those writers who certainly doesn't write an autobiography. He's very private. And so when we do have moments when Hawthorne reveals himself, at least a little bit, we want to pay very close attention to those. And the Custom House is one of those moments, one of those very rare, infrequent, and actually lovely moments. So ask yourselves as you're reading what you learn about Hawthorne, the man, right, the person, through the Custom House. One of the interesting things that Hawthorne talks about in the Custom House is his relationship to readers. And since you're all readers, right, we're all readers of this text, that relationship, understanding something about the nature of Hawthorne's relationship with us, can be very, very important and very interesting. So see what he says about that, and see how that how that feels to you, right? Is this the kind of relationship that you will have with your own readers? What's interesting about it, right? What's troubling about it? What's beautiful about it? Think very closely about that. It is also, the Custom House, right, is also a kind of meditation on place. Right? It is Hawthorne thinking about Salem, the place of his birth, right, but also a place that has a long history, a longer history than Hawthorne himself, and a long history in his own life. Those of you who were interested in D.H. Lawrence's The Spirit of Place will find the Custom House, I think, very resonant with Lawrence's text. There's so much about the influence of place here, and I think it's quite interesting, quite beautiful. So be aware of that too. Also be aware of what Hawthorne tells us about vocation, right? His vocation as a writer. What is it? Why is he drawn to writing, and why is he anxious? And I think anxious is really quite the right word, right? Why is he anxious about having chosen this vocation? What are the pressures associated with it, both now, right, in the current moment, right, in his current moment, I should say, and what are some of the pressures from the past that make him sometimes question or at least experience a kind of angst, a kind of anxiety around his chosen profession, or I should say vocation. You might also look at the importance of the past to Hawthorne. Right? Hawthorne is a writer who draws on history, right? Who is very, very deeply involved in history, but also, in some senses, right, deeply involved in history and, in one way, dissatisfied with what history can tell us. Right? He depends upon it, but he suggests that that discourse of history is not the only discourse, it's not the only truth. And in some ways, Hawthorne's fiction, right, his fiction is a way of adding to history, right, of giving history a kind of dimension that it doesn't ordinarily have. And so you may want also to sort of stage a debate for yourselves about the relationship between fiction and history. Why do we need both of those things? What do they do? What are their limits? And how can they work together? And finally, I'd like you to think about the meanings of the custom house, right? The various meanings of the custom house. What is it? Right? What literally is that house? What happens there? And what else, what figuratively can we say about the custom house? Think very much in terms of a poetics of space. Right? What is this building? What is it to Hawthorne when he is in it? How does he get out of it? And what does it mean to get out of the custom house? Right? Not just literally, right, but also figuratively. All right. Well, that's all I'm going to say. There's a lot more information, of course, in the lectures that accompany your readings, and I hope, and the discussion questions too, should help to point you in certain directions. But I hope you enjoy the custom house. Give it your attention, and if you find your attention is waning a little bit, go away and then come back to it. It is, in fact, a marvelous piece and a wonderful introduction to the story, as I think you'll see. All right, have a good Labor Day and have a wonderful week. And thank you again so much for your splendid responses. I look forward very much so to the next one.